Thank you very much for the invitation here in London. Normally I'm a cultural scientist. I usually do some research at the University of Heidelberg concerning question of conversion in religious studies or about construction or about religious identities. I'm currently working at the Baden Regional Church as a pastor with a focus normally on digital ethics and machine ethics, something very different. The reason why I talk in your context, in my profession, is quite simple. In a discussion with Mr. Moser, it became clear there are special attribution processes and processes of careful thinking for the question of skin markers and tattoos, which are very interesting for a cultural scientist. So I wrote together an article with Thorsten Moser, Menna Creed, and Robin Walker, Radiotherapy Tattoos, Woman's Skin as a Carrier of Personal Memory. What do we cause by tattooing our patients? The interesting point is, people sometimes receive strokes or small tattoo points as a part of a therapy for medical purposes to ensure the precise orientation. These strokes and small tattoos are perceived in very different, but there are no any studies what exactly happen and why it happens, in which context, which attribution processes occur. In order to get this question a bit closer, I will first discuss the tattoos in cultural studies, introduce a current approach from the construction of identities in a ritual way of thinking, refer to some translated interview snippets, and conclude with some research questions. Tattoos. Tattoos has become normal as a new hairstyle, new outfit, with the difference this outfit fits you for the lifetime. For many people, the tattoo is like jewelry. It tells of a special event, of stages of life, constitutes a lifelong membership to a group, religious conception, or another person. Sometimes the tattoo Peter later becomes Jack, or Sabrina becomes Jessica, but that's another story. Tattoos were statement, and sometimes it's an honor for people to wear a tattoo. For example, in a ritual context. Not only the facial tattoos of the Maori, the decorative scarf from the Omo in Ethiopia, but also many tattoos in daily encounters in Western Europe society are a clear sign of the accepted visibility. And I'm sure we have here also some people with tattoos. The development of the electric tattooing machine at the end of the 19th century has not led to a boom to the old time, but has changed the way of tattooing in some backrooms or shacks in the port done by wood or broken metal pieces. In addition, we have in Nazi Germany tattoos as a stigma found in the so-called sequential numbers, Laufnummern, which the Nazis stabbed the Jews, Sinti, and Roma and other people to force. Reduction and degradation were the target. In these days, clan tattoos of the Yakuza, the Chinese mafia, or in South American prisons are connected usually as a point of subculture, a subculture like in the field of the motorcycle scene. Today, according to a study of the University of Leipzig, about 25% of the total population in Germany are tattooed, and 50% of the women between 25 and 35. In this context, we will find also tattoos concerning accidents, cures, and recovery. We find tattoos after a successful treatment. The scar is often brightened as a pictorial tattoo. Many people show these tattoos very clear. For example, to connect a picture of the tattoo with the location of the operation. For example, in this manner, scars are associated with a large image of a zipper. You can find thousands of images with search terms tattoo, scar, and zipper, including all your artwork you can imagine. And that's for me most interesting, with survival stories. It's important to note that these survival stories are told in new contexts, stories of reframing of the conclusion of a special event. This is not just about having fun, but also a personal interaction of a very traumatic experience. In the way of the presentation, we got the hints concerning integration of a personal way of living. The narration, the story told, you can find very often typical elements also used in a ritual context. Transition, belonging, changing of the life situation, the new status, the new way of living, or I got a new identity. These stories have been a hint for the next step. First, how to see the way of the disease in a ritual way. Second, why are these little dots so difficult to handle? When I want to go to our small points and strokes, even when they are very small, are later integrated in ornamental stories or other pictures by the patients. I take the hint as a key to understand why there are more negative connotations when I see the stories in a ritual context. In the last week, I interviewed some people without points and strokes and with. The interviews usually begin with the following forms. For example, I know, now it starts. It was clear from this moment on, I will have to move on or the life ends here, when I'm through and someone else. That was the beginning of hell and its gates, and now on the highway. Now someone else takes the helm. These snippets of the interviews show the individuals have experienced that the agency completely transferred away from the way to other actors. From perspective of the ritual theory developed by the famous Axel Michaels at the University of Heidelberg, in this perspective, we get in Western European context almost classic words of the constitution of the first step in a ritual context, so-called causa transitionis. It's the reason why something starts, followed by solemnis intensio, the formal decision, followed by actione criteria, the actions will done later. And at the end, followed by the new status, novae classificationes, and the last, transitio vitae, the form to change the role, competence, or life context. I think you know that all by your heart. For example, in a shipping ceremony, the reason the ship is ready. The decision, buying a bottle of champagne, and the day comes, many people are involved, and you throw the bottle. In this second, the ship has another name, a new classification, and the first time in the water. Does the ritual work? Sure. But you can throw in the night before a better bottle of champagne and name the ship, nothing will happen. From a cultural point of science of view, it's not necessary that all points be managed in ritual because we construct in our mind mostly the missing parts that really happen and describe the entire process with the others. In this heuristic model, it's allowed to ask, in which part of the ritual and in which part of the disease are the tattoo attached, from whom, for which purpose? Let's take another look at some interview snippets. I then logged off, generally everywhere. I knew there is no way back. Everything was planned. I've read all books, and I'm not trying to come desperate. In this area was followed by speech snippets forms as, then I gave up my will, then I knew, now you belonging to this machine for the first time. Or, I lost control of myself, every time. The people have been very friendly, but I lost every control. Exactly in these parts of the ritual, exactly in these parts of the disease, the tattoos are stung. In addition, in this situation, before the first radiation, normal activities of everyday life get new attention. The last time before, the last time before that, the last time before the machine, or the last time before I got the tattoos. Some snippets here. For this machine, it's now clear what I have to do. I got my first tattoo. The Sharpies I like better. It was done, then it was done. Tattoos looks like it looks. The patient gave up the agency exactly in this time, and they got their tattoos, and these are doing things that their normal life they're doing the last time. With all due care, I have to say, from the outlined point of view, tattoos should be avoided as a marker in general. The patient probably associates them with a loss of power of themselves. Second, If the assumption is correct, then the tattoos should be discussed at the end in the final process and be considered an entire event with a conclusion like a ritual conclusion. Not with a big ceremony, but in a ritual that concludes the transformation. Third, looking at the data as well as some interview snippets that gives you some more hints should be investigated. The whole body seems to change in this way, in general. The people I talk to need many time and space to see and accept the changes in a long way. When the skin is a border to our surrounding world, we have to be very, very carefully with the experience the people they made there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this dramatic introduction to the thematic. It's not really clear for me as a physicist what we are doing to the patient, how dramatic these small dots are felt or felt.
Yeah. Oh, mostly when you see it, they have these dots and they later make an ornamental way or ornamental picture. They remember these dots. Oh, yeah.
Other questions from the audience?
Okay.
You would say, if you would ask the patients, some would voluntarily allow to be tattooed because it's a kind of metal they receive for surviving?
Yeah, mostly the men.
Most of the men?
Most of the men. The men normally said, okay, that's a tattoo, what else? The woman I talked to said, it's been very, very near to my skin, and it's been, for me, a little bit dangerous. It's not okay. I feel that something is going in me in another way as normal. Yeah.
It's just come in on the Slido app. I know you're not from a radiotherapy background, but there's also a ritual at the end of whether it's chemotherapy or radiotherapy. There's a bell, and they've become very, very popular in hospitals where they have a slogan and they ring the bell to signify the end of treatment.
Yeah.
But more recently in the press, there's been some negativity around the bell. And so I just wondered what your opinion is on that type of ritual to signify the end of treatment.
Yeah. When exactly the bell rings? When the patient is allowed to going home and it's forever?
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing that some people find difficult, because I think it's the way that sometimes I think it's portrayed as a celebration to end your treatment, but some people think it's a celebration to say they're cured, and then other people know that they'll never be cured. So there's been a lot in the kind of media about whether this is a good ritual or not.
You must be careful when you construct some rituals in this way. You end time, you end a treatment, you get a new status. It's you have been very exact to make a concept and what you are doing with the end of this ritual. For example, if you have got a new status, you have another ritual. For example, at some time will end. There is another ritual context you have to look at. But they just ring a bell, that can mean everything. You have to frame it.
Yeah.
Not only to ring it, you have to frame it in
the reason.
With mostly, I think it's better with the person themselves. What does the bell means in your way of living? When you, for example, when you ring the bell, and then now from this point I am, and then you have to construct it with the patient themselves.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm one of those people at a conference. I'd love to talk about Nina about the bell. That I worked in a department where we kept everything central to the patient, which was either in the bunker or in a chemotherapy pod. I'm particularly strong about the bell, that there are other patients that are in the waiting room that hear that bell and they're frequent flyers. It is present at our centres in Genesis Care, but I would love if someone would pick that up as a study that from a multi-institution, because to me, if one patient is upset by the ringing of the bell, that's one patient too many. And if you're a patient, which there will be people in the room here who are patients, there has to be people here. So they're not cured. They're not. And we have to always remember that. So if it's anything else, you discuss tattoos, I see more damage from the trauma of a bell being rung,
Yeah.
especially when someone has rung that bell perhaps only 6 weeks earlier and thought they were cured. And it's something that we need to talk about as a profession, and the RTTs particularly need to be strong about it. It sounded great when we got it because it came from a really good place. But the reality is it's not always. It's a chronic disease now for many of our patients. And it's something I think we should address, not necessarily in Vision RT conference though.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.